Hello, El Presidente Tel here. Well, the Atheist Spanker got back to me. Just want to say thank you, Atheist Spanker. You're probably one of the first religious, conservative type people who's ever got back to me on an issue on here. So, yeah, thanks. And, okay, the bellhop thing was kind of funny, but I don't care. Jacket's cool, and the jacket stays. So, let's get straight into this then. So, what you said to me at the start was that Christ resurrected Abraham, and then before all of this happened, believers lived on a side of Hades, not in heaven. Okay, you know what, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt on this, so I'll go with that. But the fact that Hades could in fact and has in fact been argued by scholars to have been translated into Hebrew as Sheol, the Hebrew word Sheol, which I believe, if I'm pronouncing it right, S-H-O-E-L, is a land of the dead. It's a place, a waiting room almost, a rallying area where people go, and it became the bosom of Abraham, the waiting room where people go before they go to paradise. You now say that the believers in Christ, after the price was paid. Now, I'm going to take that as meaning that Christ's blood was shed for humanity. If I'm wrong, please correct me. After that was done, then all believers in Christ can go straight to heaven. Not in the Roman Catholic faith they can't, because if they've committed even a small sin, they have to wait that time out in purgatory. You know, purgatory, God's waiting room essentially, where you pay your penance for sins committed. So, you know, I'd like to know your perspective on that, because I'm going to assume that you're not a Roman Catholic because you don't believe that there's any waiting around, since you believe in Christ straight up. Alrighty. You say that money forces people to have no concern for God, and that this story tells us that because the poor man suffered and he turned to the Lord, that the Lord then shone upon him and gave him paradise and oneness with the gods, and that the rich man then suffered. Well, call me picky, but if God was truly as benevolent as he was made out to be, he would have actually done something to help the beggar in the story at the time, rather than go, oh, wait till you're dead, then it'll be great, you know, he'll really get his. It's more a populist lesson, a kind of thing of, oh, you know, don't mind the rich will get theirs. Friedrich Nietzsche came up with a philosophy on this. It was called the master and the slave, and what he argued was that since the people who are downtrodden and beaten down by the rich and the economically powerful, they have no way of attacking the rich and the powerful, so they wielded a tool called religion, and this tool was wielded by the economically weak, the slaves, if you will, and they went, well, you look now, you might be rich and powerful, but you watch out, because if there's an afterlife, you people are in for it, because God's watching you and he sees that you're all rich and all powerful and you don't do anything to help other people, so you're going to go to hell. And then the powerful go, Christ, something we can't control, and we're going to change our ways. And that is Nietzsche's theory on how they were kept in check. So I argue that in essence this is the same kind of thing. This is what the rich poor man story is doing. It's going, rich people will get theirs too unless they make it right with God, and that levels everyone out. So then you say to me that I'm thick-headed because I in essence have shied away from God because of the trappings of modern life. Well, you know what, we do have a lot of trappings of modern life, and I don't think very many of them came from religion. They probably came from scientific progress and technological progress. I can live longer than a person from the medieval times. I get a better health care. I can get a better education. I don't think many of those came from religion. Television did not come from religion. Judging by a lot of religious groups, they'd probably be quite happy to get rid of television. They'd probably be quite happy to get rid of a lot of the printed word, you know, especially half the books I read, because they're fairly secular in their viewpoints, which is what happened. Society had the Enlightenment, where we decided that we didn't need to focus as much on religion anymore. and so we decided that maybe we could work together outside of religion and use science and reason to advance society as opposed to relying on 2,000-year-old dogma. So saying I am mentioned in the Bible under 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 3 under the scoffers and the mockers towards the end of times. Well, Harold Camplin got it wrong, so it's not quite the end of times yet. But I don't think I was being overly disrespectful. If you felt that way, I apologise. But I wouldn't have said I was mocking or scoffing you. Merely questioning your method. I don't think you're going to spank atheists by quoting the Bible at them, because most atheists have long since discounted the Bible as any kind of accurate method of deducing anything from Christianity and religion. The Bible, if anything, to most atheists could potentially be an interesting side note. You then say about Josephus being a Pharisee. Now, I've kind of read up on Josephus, and yes, he was a Pharisee, but it was more out of joining because it was an order rather than he actually went along with a lot of their stuff. You know, I know Josephus wasn't a big point between either of us, but he was a Romanized, should I say, scholar. He told the Roman side of events. He's known for bigging himself up in his historical documents. You know, he doesn't tell the story when he was in the Roman war of how they did the what's known today as the Josephus problem, where you count out every third person was killed by someone else in a circle, and amazingly Josephus was miraculously the only one left. You know, a lot of historians today think he may have planned it that way. But even the theological works, a lot of academics around this passage about Josephus saying, Jesus, who is the Christ, a lot of people think that that doesn't have Josephus's literal style. It was written around the 3rd or 4th century as opposed to when Josephus actually wrote it. And you say that he had books that we don't have access to. Well, I find that a bit too convenient. That, okay, he might have had access to books that we weren't privy to. But, you know, since no one else has managed to find a surviving copy of the life and times of Jesus beyond the Bible or a lot of these other books, we have a lot of books. We do have a lot of them, because a lot of them were, when the great libraries and whatnot of Alexandria were burnt and destroyed, a lot of stuff went to Baghdad and to the east, where it was recorded in Arabic and preserved. So we still have this stuff, but I'll take your point. Okay, maybe there are some books, but I really don't think they would have amounted to much. The fact that you say the bosom of Abraham and Hades are essentially the same thing kind of proved my point on that one. The very point I was asking, that Josephus just kind of went, oh yeah, we've got one of those, it's called this. But it's essentially the synonym. But it's your last point I have the biggest issue with. You know, we are not allowed to see heaven or hell because of some rebellion you say is going on. I'd love to see a proof of that there is a rebellion going on in heaven right now. I mean, if you have direct commune with God, then please show us. You know, it's a bit like someone going, I've got £1 million in here, because you don't believe me, you can't see it, but it's there. Bertrand Russell came up with it, you know, the invisible teapot. The giant invisible teapot floating the earth. You can't see it, but you just have to believe in it. And I think the problem between me and you, Atheist Spanker, is going to be a lot of your stuff is on belief. You believe this, therefore it is true. And it is true to you, therefore you believe it. Whereas I have a problem with it. I don't believe this. I don't believe what you're telling me, because you are making these very outlandish statements about rebellion in heaven, and that if we saw what a paradise heaven was, we would hide our evil. Hide our evil? God's omniscient. According to the Christian faith, God is all-knowing. How am I going to be able to pull a fast one over the living God? It's not going to happen. So hiding my evil would just be a pointless exercise. So tell me again why we can't see heaven and hell. And don't say hiding the evil and because heaven would be ruined, because it wouldn't. Because you've got an all-powerful God. Either you haven't got an all-powerful God and he can effectively be conned by a game of call my bluff, or you have an all-knowing God and your justifications mean nothing. Anyway, I'd like to see you get back to me on this, because this is proving to be fascinating. El Presidente Tel. Love, peace, liberty.